India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Hello and welcome to News 9. Let's take a look at what's happening at Morning Brief, the top stories. Let's take a look. Indian Embassy issues urgent exit advisory for citizens in Iran amid escalating protests and security concerns. Iran closes its airspace temporarily to most flights, forcing airlines to cancel, reroute or delay flights amid concerns about possible military action between the United States and Iran. Crude prices fall sharply after US President Donald Trump says killing linked to Iran's protest crackdown appear to be slowing, easing fears of fresh West Asian escalation. India's exports to China rise by $5.5 billion even as trade deficit hits a record $116 billion. After Blinkit, Zepto, Swiggy, Instamart and Flipkart, minutes roll back 10-minute delivery claims amid labor pressure. President Emmanuel Macron says France will join Danish military exercises in Greenland as Donald Trump keeps floating US takeover remarks of the Danish territory. Elon Musk denies claims of AI Grok's chatbot producing explicit images of minors, responding to growing scrutiny online, AI safety and moderation. China reports its biggest ever $1.2 trillion trade surplus in 2025, driven by booming exports to non-US markets as firms scale up globally to offset pressure from the Trump-era tariffs. Chinese authorities reportedly instruct local companies to stop using cybersecurity tools from US and Israeli firms, citing national security risks as tech tensions deepen. Now, as mass protests against the Ayatollah Khamenei regime continue to intensify, the Indian Embassy in Tehran has issued an urgent advisory asking all Indian nationals stranded in Iran to leave the country immediately. The advisory applies to everyone, businesspersons, students, pilgrims and tourists, and urges Indians to use all available means, including commercial flights, to exit Iran at the earliest. The warning comes as a death toll in the nationwide protests, which has surged to at least 2,571 people, emphasizing the rapidly deteriorating security situation. The embassy has asked Indian citizens to remain in constant touch, keep their travel and identification documents ready, and closely monitor local developments. Indians have also been advised to avoid protest sites and large gatherings, exercise extreme caution, and follow updates through local media. Though not yet registered with the embassy, have been asked to do so immediately. Emergency helpline numbers and email support has also been activated to assist those seeking help. Meanwhile, the crisis inside Iran is deepening. Weeks of protests show no signs of slowing, even as Iran's judiciary has signaled fast-track trials and executions for those detained during the demonstrations. US President Donald Trump has weighed in, urging protesters to take control of their institutions and not back down. Trump said assistance was on its way without offering specifics and called on Tehran to show humanity as the crackdown continues. He described the scale of killings as significant and said his administration would act accordingly. Amid rising tensions, some personnel have reportedly been advised to leave the US military's Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American base in West Asia, adding to concerns of a wider regional fallout. Iran has briefly shut its airspace on Wednesday, allowing only international flights with official permission, citing security concerns, according to the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. The move comes amid sharply rising regional tensions as the United States began withdrawing some personnel from military bases in the Middle East. Iran has warned that it would strike American facilities if Washington launches an attack, heightening fears of escalation. The closure disrupted global air traffic, with several airlines avoiding Iranian airspace due to increased missile and drone risks. Carriers affected included Indigo, Lufthansa, Aeroflot, as operators reassess flight paths across West Asia. Indian Airlines confirmed disruptions. Indigo said some of its international services were impacted following Iran's sudden airspace shutdown. Air India, meanwhile, said flights that normally overfly Iranian airspace are now being rerouted through alternate corridors that could result in longer flight times and delays. Aviation authorities and airlines continue to monitor the situation closely as uncertainty persists over the duration of the restrictions and the broader security outlook in the region. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said he had been informed that killings linked to Iran's crackdown on nationwide protests are easing and that there was currently no plan for large-scale executions. Iran's leadership is struggling to contain what has been described as one of the most severe domestic unrest in the Islamic Republic's history, while also trying to deter President Trump's repeated warnings of possible U.S. intervention in support of anti-government protesters.
We have been notified and pretty strongly, but we'll find out what that all means. But we've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. We're going to watch and see what the process is, but we were given a very good statement by people that are aware of what's going on.
India's exports to China have registered a notable turnaround, rising by 5.5 billion over the past year. Even with the overall trade deficit between the two countries widened to record USD 116.12 billion, according to annual trade data released by Chinese Customs on Wednesday. Bilateral trade surged to an all-time high of USD 155.62 billion in 2025, a year marked by renewed tariff hikes from U.S. President Donald Trump. Indian exports to China, which have long struggled to gain traction, climbed to USD 19.75 billion between January and December, posting a 9.7% increase at the same time. Chinese exports to India grew even faster, up by 12.8% to USD 135.87 billion. Despite improved export numbers, the trade imbalance remains a major concern. The deficit crossed the USD 100 billion mark for the second time since 2023, reflecting India's heavy dependence on Chinese imports. Analysts say the rise of Indian exports through modest signals a structural shift. Products such as oil meals, marine goods, telecom instruments and spices are gaining ground in the Chinese market. Even as Beijing grapples with weak domestic consumption, India continues to press China to open access for its IT, pharmaceutical and agricultural products. Home loan demand in India is steadily shifting away from the core metropolitan markets, with Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities emerging as the main drivers of growth in 2025. The report shows that the home loan volumes in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities surged 81% year-on-year, far outpacing the 52% growth recorded in Tier 1 metros. As a result, these emerging markets now account for 64% of the total home loan volumes, up from 60% last year, signaling a broader and more evenly distributed housing finance cycle. Experts say housing demand is no longer concentrated in a handful of large cities or premium segments. Instead, improved infrastructure, expanding Employment hubs and the steady supply of mid-income housing are boosting home ownership across smaller cities and peripheral urban corridors. Rising affordability pressures in metros are also pushing aspirational buyers to enter the market through non-metro locations. India's major quick commerce platforms are stepping back from the ultra-fast delivery claims after Blinkit companies including Zepto, Swiggy, Instamart and Flipkart Minutes have in fact dropped their 10-minute delivery branding, following pressure from the government and the labour rights groups over the safety and welfare of delivery partners. The shift comes days after Union Labour Minister Mansukh Mandavia held a meeting with industry stakeholders, urging companies to put worker safety ahead of aggressive delivery timelines. The minister reportedly asked platforms to remove the rigid 10-minute promises, warning that such deadlines place excessive pressure on riders. Mercedes-Benz India has announced it will begin local manufacturing of the Mercedes Maybach GLS at its Pune facility, making India the first market outside the United States to produce the ultra-luxury SUV. Until now, the Maybach GLS was imported as a completely built unit since its launch in 2021. The announcement comes alongside the launch of Celebration Edition priced at 4.1 crore ex-showroom. Crucially, local production will significantly lower prices, with the Maybach GLS now starting at 2.75 crore, a reduction of nearly 40 lakh rupees. Mercedes-Benz says the move reflects India's growing importance, with the country now ranking among the top 5 global markets for Mercedes Maybach for the first time. Local assembly is expected to improve accessibility and shorten delivery timelines. We slip into a short break now. News and updates will continue on the other side.
इंडिया, ये तेरे लिए, तेरा नाम गूंजे, ये जिद है मेरी।
नए फैसलों के साथ तू आगे बढ़े, ये जिद है मेरी।
तेरे घर सपनों से बने, जिद छे मारी।
तेरे हर इरादे को हौसला मिले, जिद ए अमर।
जब तो बोले तो दुनिया सुने, पिडिवादम एनेतयेदो।
मेरी कहानी से इंडिया की कामयाबी लिखूं। जिद है साडी। जब आप अपनी तरक्की की जिद पर अड़ते हो, तो इंडिया की जीत होती है। इस जिद में आपके साथ गर्व से है टाटा कैपिटल। टाटा कैपिटल, जिद तरक्की की।
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कर आता है। आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया। Windows down, chasing dreams on a net.
With Skoda Supercare and growing network across 180 plus cities, you never drive alone.
Skoda.
US stocks have ended lower on Wednesday, led by losses in Nasdaq as technology shares came under pressure and investors rotated into more defensive sectors. Bank stocks extended their recent decline after a mixed set of quarterly earnings, adding to the broader market weakness. Take a look.
Stocks finished lower Wednesday as the Dow fell fractionally, the S&P 500 slipped 0.5%, and the Nasdaq lost 1%. Technology shares declined as investors moved into more defensive areas, while bank stocks extended recent losses following some mixed quarterly results. Wells Fargo fell about 4.5% after the company missed fourth-quarter profit expectations. Financials, including the banks, which were up sharply in 2025, have fallen this week amid concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed cap on credit card interest rates. Nancy Tangler, CEO and Chief Investment Strategist with Laffer Tangler Investments, says suggestions like this one are leading to more market fluctuations.
I think the market is going to be much more volatile in the first quarter than we are used to. And I think the reason for that is that we've got a lot of policy balloons being floated out of Washington, D.C. And so the algorithms read the headlines and they start selling as soon as they see that the president's going to cap interest rates on credit cards. That is not possible at 10%. I just don't see it happening. But you get the volatility in the short term. We saw it just recently with defense stocks. The president attacked them and the stocks came back very nicely. Same with housing. So expect volatility.
Data earlier on Wednesday showed producer prices in the U.S. matched forecasts in November, but retail sales topped expectations. Other stocks on the move included Broadcom, which fell 4% after China banned the use of its cybersecurity software due to national security concerns. It was one of more than a dozen firms from the U.S. and Israel cited by the government in Beijing.
Meanwhile, global stock markets traded near record highs on Wednesday as investors continue to look past growing economic and geopolitical complexities. While equities remain resilient, signs of caution surfaced elsewhere. Precious metals and oil markets showed increasing volatility, reflecting lingering unease over global risks, even as stock investors stayed largely optimistic.
World shares hung around record highs on Wednesday. Traders found ways to argue why complex world economics and politics wouldn't hit stocks, although jitters could be seen in precious metal and oil markets. Investors were trying to balance those concerns with busy days ahead. US corporate earnings are due, while eyes are on Federal Reserve updates and where the Supreme Court could rule on tariffs. Share indexes in Asia and Europe both rose to all-time peaks. Asian stocks were lifted by Japanese markets. Investors have braced for a possible election that could lead to more stimulus there. But the bounce wasn't seen in pre-market US trade due to falls from Citi and Wells Fargo after their results. Elsewhere, silver rose to $92 per ounce for the first time on Wednesday. It surged close to 30% in the first 9 trading days of the year. Gold is also back at record highs and up 7% in the first 2 weeks of the year. Investors have noted a number of geopolitical concerns. There are fears about Federal Reserve independence to US aims to own Greenland. Protesters in Iran are also a focus for investors. Their worries over Iranian supply disruptions sent oil prices higher for a 5th straight session on Wednesday.
Let's take a short break now. News and updates will continue on the other side.
लूजर। लाइफ हो या इन्वेस्टिंग, ओवर कॉन्फिडेंस से नुकसान भी हो सकता है। म्यूचुअल फंड अपनाओ और थोड़ी हेवी लिफ्टिंग एक्सपर्ट्स को भी करने दो।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
बढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump spoke with Delcy Rodriguez, the interim leader of Venezuela, in a phone call on Wednesday in what both leaders describe as a positive and constructive conversation. Rodriguez assumed the presidency earlier this month after Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was captured by US forces and brought to United States to face drug-related charges. Trump said that he discussed oil, minerals, trade and security with Rodriguez and described the talks as a step forward, telling that he would stabilize Venezuela and also recovery will be underway. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, U.S. Senate Republicans voted down a resolution that would have barred President Donald Trump from taking further military action in Venezuela without Congress's approval. The motion was blocked on at 51-50 vote after Senator and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote in favor of dismissing the measure that sought to limit President's war powers. Just 3 Senate Republicans joined all Democrats in backing the effort before party pressure shifted the outcome. The vote came after intense lobbying from White House and other administration officials following earlier bipartisan support for a resolution that aimed to reassert congressional authority over military decisions.
The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday repeated his assertion that Washington needs Greenland for security reasons, saying Denmark cannot be relied upon to adequately protect the island. This comes as France prepares to open a consulate in Greenland next month in a move that it says reflects the semi-autonomous island's desire to remain part of Denmark and the European Union.
We need Greenland for national security, so we're going to see what happens.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday made clear he was not backing down from his bid to take control of Greenland, saying he still believed that something will work out.
Greenland is very important for the national security, including of Denmark. And the problem is, there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it if Russia or China wants to occupy Greenland, but there's everything we can do.
His comments followed a meeting at the White House between the foreign ministers of Greenland and Denmark and Trump's vice president and secretary of state.
We didn't manage to change the American position.
Denmark's foreign minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen said fundamental differences over Greenland remained.
The discussions focused on how to ensure the long-term security in Greenland. And here our perspectives continue to differ, I must say. The President has made his view clear, and we have a different position. It's clear that the President has this wish of conquering over Greenland.
Rasmussen said the U.S. and Denmark plan to form a working group to discuss a broad array of concerns regarding the Danish overseas territory. Trump had repeatedly said in recent weeks that the strategically located and mineral-rich island is vital to national security and that only the U.S. can handle threats from Russia and China. Rasmussen disagreed.
But I must say that, of course, we share, to some extent, his concerns. There is definitely a new security situation in the Arctic and the high north. It was basically about security, and as I said, even though there's not an instant threat from China and Russia, at least not a threat we can't accommodate.
Greenland and Denmark say the island is not for sale, and prominent EU countries have backed Denmark, which is a member of the NATO alliance. Ahead of the meeting, Greenland and Denmark said they had begun to increase their military presence in and around Greenland, in close cooperation with NATO allies, as part of their promise to beef up Arctic defense. Germany, Sweden, and Norway each announced on Wednesday that they will be sending military personnel to the island this week.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has once again reaffirmed EU's strong relationship with Greenland, pledging continued support for the island's interests. Speaking on Wednesday, von der Leyen stressed that Arctic security is a strategic concern, not just for NATO, but for the EU as well. Listen in.
So there's a strong and good and existing relationship between the European Union and the Greenlanders. And for me it's important that the Greenlanders know, and they know this by the deeds, not only by the words, that we respect the wishes of the Greenlanders and their interests, and that they can count on us.
China on Wednesday reported a record trade surplus of nearly 1.2 trillion in 2025, driven largely by surging exports to markets outside the United States. The data shows Chinese manufacturers increasingly pivoting towards non-US destinations as they scale up globally to offset sustained trade pressure from the Donald Trump administration. Take a look.
China on Wednesday posted a record trade surplus of almost $1.2 trillion in 2025. Chinese policymakers' push to diversify beyond the US paid off as exports to non-US markets boomed. Producers have tried to build global scale and fight off trade pressure from the Trump administration. They have shifted focus to Southeast Asia, Africa and Latin America, and that helped cushion the economy against US tariffs and tensions with Washington. There will be more challenges for Beijing heading into this year. That as global capitals have grown more worried about China's trade practices and overcapacity. But a customs official announced Wednesday that China's foreign trade remains solid. They added its ability to deal with risks has been significantly enhanced. Its December exports grew 6.6% year-on-year, beating forecasts and up from November's number. Imports were up 5.7%. Economists expect China to continue gaining global market share this year, bolstered by Chinese firms setting up overseas production hubs to combat US and EU tariffs, as well as strong demand for lower-grade chips and other electronics. But Beijing still faces further questions about how long it can counteract a property slump and weak domestic demand by shipping cheap goods to other markets.
Well, that's all in Morning Brief. Stay tuned to News9 for further news updates.
दूरियां कोई अपनों में ना रहे, दिल में जब उमंग हो, घर है वही जहाँ सब संग हो, रिश्तों को रंग दो, दुनिया को रंग दो।
Birla Opus Paints.
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता